here. It's got a little description. Now you'll notice on this assignment, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 requirements. It's got 5, 10, 15. This is 14, let's say 15. So it's 30, 35. I'm asking you to shoot 45 images for this assignment. I'm asking you to turn in at least 4 contact sheets, one for each of your requirements, okay? So this is a pretty big assignment, although I'll talk more about it on Thursday. It's not that big, and it has some crossover and some other things like that. And again, with my assignments, it's not like a checklist. So when it says 5 images freezing the action, it doesn't mean I go, okay, there's those 5. Okay, here's these 5 street scenes showing motion. Here's 5 panning. I look through them and I kind of look for those things, but it's not like, okay, oh, you only did 4. I'm going to take off points. It's not how I do them. These are, I'm asking you to do them. So I want to see that you're working with these things, you know. And again, these are the minimums, you know, this is what I'm asking you to do. That's fine. If you're going to just do the minimum, they better be really good. I'd rather see more than less. So again, I'll go through this assignment a little bit more, but you'll see in this assignment, street photo to me is one of the most difficult things. What I could call it documentary as well. It's what I used to call it, but people like street photo. They like that idea. Although in a pandemic, it's a little difficult. So street photography, the essence of it is that you carry your camera around and look for things to photograph. Often people will put themselves into places or positions where they think things are going to be interesting. So the standard cliche thing is to go to Venice Beach, and you know, there's a lot of characters there, there's a lot of color, there's a lot of things happening, you know, but if you're going to be there, you have to fight that cliche of it being Venice Beach. So you're going to have to make even more interesting images of those things that we already see and we've seen lots of photographs of. I have to tell you though, last semester I had a student who, I guess she really liked Venice, seemed to be there all the time. Maybe she worked there. I don't know why, but she made some really amazing photographs of Venice because she was looking at it in a way. Well, we'll talk about that in a way that not as your standard tourist, but a little bit more of as how would I put it? More of as an insider. And we're going to talk about that when we look at street photo or documentary photo, how you're approaching your subject matter. We saw Cartier-Bresson and Diane Arbus the other day. Cartier-Bresson approached it as an outsider, right? Carrying his camera, looking around, fly on the wall, candid camera kind of approach. Diane Arbus, engaging people, making sort of street portraits, but they know they're being photographed. They're aware of the camera, versus Cartier-Bresson, they're not. We'll talk about other people that do that. In fact, the 2 artists I'm going to show on Thursday, Gary Winogrand, actually, there'll be Venice Beach. He'll be there photographing. That's the one where he's photographing in Venice Beach. Who does sort of the candid camera style. Then we'll look at Dash Snow, who is photographing his friends and things that they do. So as an insider, you know, photographing versus as an outsider, looking at other things. So, and then we'll see Nan Golden, who photographs her friends and family. You know, so it's not that I'm opposed to you taking those photographs. It's about making them interesting. So, but on this assignment, you'll see I'm asking for 4 things. The first one, movement. So again, it's about using your shutter. Shutter to freeze the action, shutter to show the motion, and then panning or zooming with your camera, okay? The second one is a little different. It's about sequence. It's about, you know, laying something out. Now it can be as simple as setting your camera on sequence, setting it for 7, and just shooting somebody as they move through a scene. That may be interesting, probably not so much. But it can also be, you know, a photograph that's more extended, a sequence of photographs, like a little kid in line. You see him in line and he's kind of looking. And then you pull back and you see him get up to the counter. It's an ice cream cone stand or something like that. And you see him giving his money and waiting. You see him being handed the ice cream cone. You see him walking away all excited. You see him put it to his mouth. And then maybe the next image is the ice cream on the ground. You see him crying, or you see the parent trying to scoop it up, or you see people staring at him as he's screaming. Whatever that sequence of events is, sort of telling a story, giving a narrative. And it doesn't have to be maybe you set it up for, here's what I look like when I wake up. Here's what I look at an hour into my day. Here's where I'm at the next hour. Here's where I'm at the next hour. And you just do every hour, whatever I'm looking at, here's what's happening. It's going to be harder for me to understand unless you explain that, but we can look at a sequence. The next one, extreme depth, again, using your aperture, everything from near to far in focus, as opposed to, a shallow depth of field. And then the last one is requirement is gestures. I want you to pay attention to people and what are those things that we do as human beings to convey happiness, sadness, lust, anger, whatever those things are. The most common gesture is this one, okay? Boring, cliche, oh, you're such a rebel, you're flipping off the camera. I mean, my God, how many photographs do we need of people flipping off the camera to show us how punk rock or rebellious they are? I find the subtlety more interesting. What is that thing that makes somebody truly rebellious? What is that thing that we sort of notice, but we try to ignore? So we'll talk about that, but that's what the next assignment is. So it's going to be a street photo assignment. But again, during the pandemic, you don't have to go out. You don't have to go to downtown. You don't have to go to Uptown Whittier. You don't have to go out on the street. You can photograph the people in your home. If you don't leave the house because it's a pandemic, photograph the people in your home. What are those things that other people don't notice about your house? What is it, those things that happen every day that make you happy, that make you sad, that you want to show other people? And again, is it using a shallow depth of field? Is it using a greater depth of field? How do you make that photograph interesting? Do you wake up every morning and you have 15 minutes to yourself where you have a cup of coffee and you sit at the window and just think about what your day is going to be like? How do you make that photograph? How do you make the photograph of you wake up early and you go in and you see your kids and it's that moment of joy? But how do you make that photograph for somebody who doesn't know your kids? How is that photograph interesting? And that's what we'll be talking about as we go on. How do you take those images and make them interesting to other people who don't know your kid, who don't understand that you're getting your coffee in the morning? How do you make that feeling a visual image? Okay. So that's the next assignment coming up, the street photo assignment. So let me head back